All right, now we're going to look at part 2 of the unit circle. So we're going to go over here and we're going to look at finding our radian measures. So we're going to look over here and we're going to figure out how we're making these measures going around the unit circle that have these pi's with it. Well, the reason why there's a pi with it is because it talks about the circumference of the circle, and circumference of the circle is 2 pi r. So if we started from here and went up here, we went pi radians of that full circle of 2 pi r. So if we actually went all the way around the circle, we would end up at 2 pi because remember, the radius here is 1. So if we found the circumference, that would be 2 pi times 1, which would be 2 pi. So that's the reason behind the whole radiant measure stuff. So it talks about the length going around that circle in terms of the circumference. So let's go on and see exactly how are we going to make these and where are we going to do. Now, we could just go through a straight formula to find these if we wanted to and label them out every single time. We could take 30 degrees and by this formula up here, multiply it by pi over 180 degrees, that would equal 30 degrees divided by 180 degrees times pi. Our degrees would cancel out. We can go ahead and cancel out the zeros, and 3 and 18 break down to 1 over 6. So we would be ending up with 1 times pi, which would be pi, divided by 6. If we took 45 degrees, we would multiply that by pi over 180, which would equal 45 degrees times pi divided by 180 degrees. Again, our degrees would cancel. And 45 goes into 180 4 times, so we'd have pi over 4. So we could go through all of those angles this way and keep going through them and keep going through them. That would be a long process each time. So let's look at the pattern of the ways that we could find these radiant measures out. Now, when we look at our pattern, we're going to look and remember that we have 30-degree marks all around the circle. Well, if we think about starting at 0 and 1, as in 1 pi, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We would have 6 times that we would have to draw a line until we get to 1. So if we think about it as being 1, 6, 2, 6, 3, 6, 4, 6, 5, 6, and 6, 6, we'll have our radiant measures. Okay. Now, if we label in our degrees here so that we can overlap the concepts, we're going by 30 degrees. So we'd be 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 120 degrees, 150 degrees, and 180 degrees. Now, we can't just leave them as our fractions this way. We have to leave them as radians. So we would have pi over 6. Simplifying, we get pi over 3, pi over 2, 2 pi over 3, 5 pi over 6, and just that pi. Now we could continue this pattern going the rest of the way down. Well, we're at 6, 6 here, so this would be 7 over 6, 8 over 6, 9 over 6, 10 over 6, 11 over 6, and 12 over 6. Well, let's do the same thing we did before and go ahead and label in our degrees. So 180 plus 30 is 210 degrees. Then we're at 240 degrees, 270 degrees, 300 degrees, 330 degrees, and 360 degrees. Again, we cannot leave these as just 7 over 6, so we need to add a pi with it, so it becomes 7 pi over 6. Now, if we wrote 8 pi over 6, we can write that better as 4 pi over 3. 9 pi over 6 writes better as 3 pi over 2. 10 pi over 6 should be written as 5 pi over 3. 11 pi over 6. And 12 pi over 6 equals 2 pi. Very good. We've gone around and we've seen the pattern of finding the 30-degree angles going all the way around and converting them into our radians. Now we're going to continue doing this with our 45-degree angles as well. So let's draw in those 45s. Now, when we draw in our 45s, we're still going to use the 90, the 180, and the 270 just like we did before. So we're at 0 degrees, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 135 degrees, 180 degrees, 225 degrees, 270 degrees, 315 degrees, and that gives us all of our 45 degrees going around the circle. Now, going back and thinking about what we did just a second ago, we're going to go from 0 radians over to 1 radians or 1 pi radians. So we would have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4, which should make sense because here we should have it equaling 1. Now this time I'm going to continue going the rest of the way down. So we're at 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and 8/4. Now, we can't just leave them as plain fractions because it's talking about the radian length relating to circumference going around this circle. So, what are we going to have here? Well, let's look at that. Here, remember, we got to add our pi to it, so we'd be at pi over 4. 2 pi over 4 would be pi over 2. 3 pi over 4, pi. 5 pi over 4. Well, 6 pi over 4 should be written as 3 pi over 2. We have 7 pi over 4. 8 pi over 4 would give us 2 pi. And that gives us the pattern to our 45-degree angles going around. Now, placing all of the radiant measures back on to one unit circle, we can look at it right here. Now, so at 30 degrees, we have pi over 6. 60 degrees, pi over 3. 120 degrees, 2 pi over 3. At 150 degrees, we have 5 pi over 3. At 210 degrees, we have 7 pi over 3. At 240 degrees, we have 4 pi over 3. And at 300 degrees, we have 5 pi over 3. And at 330 degrees, we have 11 pi over 6. Now remember, those were all of our going around our 30-degree marks. Now we can go around our 45-degree marks, and we have pi over 4, 3 pi over 4 for 135 degrees. Our next at 225 degrees is 5 pi over 4, and at 315 degrees we have 7 pi over 4. Now, at our other marks, so at 0 degrees we have 0 radians. At 90 degrees we have pi over 2 radians. At 180 degrees we have pi radians. At 270 degrees we have 3 pi over 2 radians. and back at 360 we have 2 pi. So we have now just explored the patterns to going around and making our radiant measures of the unit circle.